Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene, and today we're talking about gods and demigods and games.
sounds good. I think there was a AD&D book called. No, that was gods and demigods, deities and demigods, because things have to kind of rhyme or start the same, like Dungeons and Dragons. Anyway, so I think gods are pretty interesting. Usually in fantasy games, right? Though there is some cases of gods in science fiction games. I might talk about that after this discussion. But almost every fantasy game out there has a god,
A pantheon.
right? A set of mythical beings that are either, usually super powerful and sometimes can be involved in the dealings of mortals, and sometimes not.
Well, if you've read Terry Pratchett, which I know you have.
I haven't. I mean, I've only read one book.
He talks about, I think one of his books is called Small Gods. And the idea is that the more you believe in a god, the stronger the god is. And the less you believe in a god, the smaller that he gets.
Literally
and
talking about
loses
size.
Power.
Yeah. I think, when did he write that book? Do you know?
No.
Because, what's his name?
I'm going to say it's in the 90s. 1990s.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so what is his name?
I'm not
Neil
sure.
Gaiman.
Yes.
A particular author I really don't like. Sorry. He came out with American Gods. I don't know when he wrote that. It's similar to that idea, right? Is the more people believe in you, the more powerful, not the size of the god. That is pretty funny because if, not too many people believe you're like a little 2-inch god, right? Theoretically in your Terry Pratchett.
I don't remember if they got really tiny or what exactly.
So anyway,
it's been a while.
Gaiman's American Gods, the more people believe in you, and if you're a god, the more powerful you were. So it's an interesting book at the very beginning, but it's one of the few books I've never finished because I really didn't like it.
Okay.
I know that's going to upset a lot of people because a lot of people love that book. And I think they even made it into a TV show. Anyway, so gods in fantasy games and in some science fiction games, they are part of Pantheon. They're part of what you bring to the table usually when you run a game.
A lot of times you don't actually bring them to the table. They're just there, right? And you're like, most of the time you're not, unless it's a specific game that you're playing that has to do with a god, or like when we played the campaign with the giants and
Storm King's Thunder.
Yeah. Those were would be considered what, demigods?
Probably demigods.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, I in my 40 years of gaming or so, I hardly use gods in my games. They're there, sort of, depending on what iteration of D&D I was using, or Pathfinder, or whatever game I was running. There's usually a set of a Pantheon that's set, or a lot of people use like the Greek and Roman ones, or similar to that, but they change the name. Or they scrunch down the number of gods because they don't want a huge pantheon of gods that are a god for everything. I know that they've always been there, and in AD&D and original D&D and even other 3.0, clerics were intimately involved in gods because that's where they received their power from. If they weren't being good clerics to that god, they may not get their spells that they want and stuff. Though I never played it that way. I never really involved too much god in everyday life of players. And in fact, they hardly ever did anything with the players' lives. So they were pretty non-existent, right? I had gods.
They were existent. They just were not utilized.
Yeah, never utilized. So for the most part, they were non-existent. I mean, I equate them with the idea of components and spells, right? Did you really have to have I don't know what, a bone of a small bird to be able to fly? I just said, well, you figure if you got the spell, you're going to get everything you need to throw that spell. I'm not going to worry about the details. And so gods, to me, were details that I really didn't want to deal with because they never made an appearance in my games. It wasn't until much later, till after I read some modules like and campaigns like Storm King's Thunder, where they would just toss in a god in the guise or a dragon, and the dragons, they're pretty much demigods in a certain sense, especially,
compared to humans.
yeah, especially if they're really old dragons, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was Storm King's Thunder. They said, "Oh, this golden dragon. If they go to this place, he's in a hut, pretending to be a old man by the sea, kind of thing, in a hut. Not a shepherd. What do you call it? A hermit. According to, if you read the any blurb about golden dragons, is that they can become human or have a human guise, and they will literally just kind of hang out and help people just to see what happens, kind of thing. I did that, and because of the weird location that this hermit was living in, the players caught on real quick that this guy was just not a hermit, though they couldn't figure out what he was. And I don't know, somebody might have thought about it, because you guys were pretty dead on, and I don't know how I could have let on that this guy was a golden dragon, but that you guys caught on to that, or somebody did. I think it was Ian for
Yeah, Ian.
And I don't know, maybe he read the book or something, but
I don't think so.
But no, but it's a big book, and you would notice if somebody had it. So after that, I thought, wow, that's an interesting way of inserting gods or godlike things into games, and simply because it wasn't even my idea, it was in Storm King's Thunder, I think, or a module of some sort. Well, I think when stuff like that happens, I think you kind of miss opportunities. Like, I played or run D&D for 20 years at least, with, for almost back to back or longer, where I just ran campaign after campaign, and gods just didn't make an appearance. And I think that was a mistake on my part, because I think they add a little something to the game that really is, but can be a very interesting story to tell.
Well, I remember that hermit, and I believe it was Ian, because there was a boat was involved, and I forget what it was that the guy said, but Ian, his eyes lit up, and he was like, "Oh, this isn't a man, this is a dragon." To which everybody looked at him, going,
"What the hell?" Well,
but
I gotta wonder where it came from, because I was pretty astounded that he made that revelation.
Well, he does watch a lot of anime, and he has a lot of ideas.
This was a few years ago.
Yeah, he was an older teenager still.
Yeah, that's true.
But you've done that, and that might have been the first time we encountered that kind of power. Although, even in the other games, there was the dragon in the cave that was stuck in there.
The beginning of Storm King's Thunder.
Okay.
Same campaign. That was originally my idea, but he was just a way of
moving you to a place. Right. Yeah. But in when we played, we've encountered dragons before in Shadowrun.
Oh yeah.
We've met 2 dragons, and we lived both times.
Yes, sure.
Barely. And it was a very interesting. We were tiptoeing around because they wanted us to do stuff, right? But one of them, he didn't want to have anything to do with us, but we had to get his help.
Yes, that was the second guy, I believe.
And it was very scary for all of us, and not scary as in, oh my God, we're going to die. It was like, what's going to happen, right? It was like you're like, it's not an anxiety, it's like an anticipation of what could possibly go wrong here.
Yeah, I think because I used that in Storm King's Thunder, that one incident, and you guys came across another dragon, though he wasn't as old, or she wasn't as old.
She was pretending to be a giant, wasn't she?
I forget what it was.
Yeah.
Well, there was dragons and giants all over that game. So
yeah.
There was that crazy green dragon in the forest. I don't know if you guys came across it, and it was like she was really wacky. Anyway, so I think it was Storm King's Thunder, because I think we played Shadowrun after that.
Yeah.
So after that, I go, wow, it's really interesting that interaction between players and a really powerful being. being. Am I saying that right?
Yes, a being.
Yes. I hear bean, like coffee bean, but no. Anyway, so I think when you have those interactions where players are really going, this person doesn't seem real, or there's something off about this person, usually in the guise of a human. What's going on, right? Where's the other? When is the other foot going to drop, or whatever you want to call it? And I think that's a very interesting way of. I think that situation is very interesting. So that's why once I used that hermit in that game in the Stone King Thunder, I go, oh, and then we're playing Shadowrun, and there's a book called Make a Deal with the Dragon, a Shadowrun novel, and it's like super famous. It's probably one of the first or second novels that come out. Was a novelization of a Shadowrun world. So I think everybody has that idea about dragons. It's like you don't trust them. They are not.
What they say is not necessarily what they mean.
Of course. And I think we had a discussion about really weird or powerful beings in your game, right? I forget what the title or the number of that episode was, but it was pretty far back, probably in the hundreds. And we talked about how gods are just different than any other creature that the players are going to run across. Anything that's super powerful, right? That's a situation where the players are always a little bit. They should be a little
apprehensive.
Bit yes.
We talked about this before because I don't remember.
We talked about how to play them, right? About how they would act and react and stuff.
Oh, like powerful. Elves.
Elves, right? Remember we had a discussion about elves. There was somebody on the Reddits, and a few people agreed that said that elves are so different because they live forever, depending on what mythology you believe in, and you can never role play an elf correctly because you can't really know that.
As a human, you can't get into it. Yes,
as us mere mortals. Yeah. So they would be so strange or alien to us that we wouldn't be able to play them. Which I think is kind of bunk. And the same thing for gods, right? That's why we have imaginations, and that's why we can imagine things. It's like Q, right? Q from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Now he could be considered magical.
Okay, or a god.
Or a god, yeah. And I'm not sure how they talk about what is his name, Q, as far as is it magic, or is he just so knowledgeable in science that he's able to?
That's their race. They live forever and they control stuff.
Yeah, so it's very strange. Anyway, so I think that was one of my ideas about gods when I would say younger, but in the past, that I would think that I wouldn't want to involve gods in the players' lives in any way, because one, the characters are too low level, no matter what level they are, and usually I don't play high level characters, so they're too low level to deal with gods, and therefore I never included them in my games.
I don't know that the character has to be high level to deal with a god.
Oh no, of course. That was my misconception. That's what I'm saying. That was one reason that I had in my brain that I wouldn't have gods involved in my games. In fact, I enumerated a few. Another one was I never thought about it. It wasn't until Storm King Thunder. I mean, I'm sure I thought about it, but I never really thought about how their interaction would be, or how it would go, or how I would handle that situation. So I just never thought about it. I never included it. Another reason was there was a book called Deities and Demigods by TSR, and
in the way back days.
AD&D. Yeah, this is 80s. Might have been the late 70s, and they started out gods right from different pantheons, the Roman gods, Greek gods, and they included some gods from people's I don't know, what would you call them, from people's books, like literary gods, I guess. The people made up their own worlds, so they had their own gods. One of them was Michael Moorcock's world that he invented, where there was these. Anyway, so the main character is an albino, and he stats out this guy because he's like really powerful. But they also stat out the gods of that world that this guy made up, Michael Moorcock made up, and they had gods from another series. I think it was Cthulhu that they had statted out. So
I'd be careful with that one. There's some gods you don't want to interact with.
because they were statted out and they had hit points and all this other stuff. I mean, I'm talking hundreds of hit points, right? The gods. So I go, man, why would I include those in any game? Because they would just like be able to thrash the player characters. And yes, that's true. They would be able to thrash the player characters, but that's not where you put them in.
I think it also depends on how your players look at playing with gods in the game, right? Like for us, some of the people we play with are atheists or whatever, or different.
I never thought about that yet.
So it doesn't mean a lot to them, right?
Right.
Whereas like if you're playing with really Christian players, they would probably not want to include a lot
delve too much into
arena. That's there's nothing to see here kind of thing. Versus like, if you're playing with, like, some people do really good, like our friend Jason, when we were playing D&D, remember he was a part of a dragon cult, and he really, really liked dragons.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And his ambition in life was to meet a dragon.
Right. Yes.
And he played the character like that. Like anytime we were someplace, he'd go, "Is there a dragon? Does this have something to do with dragons?"
Yes.
And
he was trying to follow any lead that
he could get to a dragon. Whatever dragon it was, I forget which dragon it was.
I think it was any kind of dragon.
Any dragon.
Yeah. And so at the very end of that game, I think he did come in sort of contact with the dragon.
Which was really cool the way that he played it. I hadn't seen someone play it like that. And then we've been playing Conan recently, and last year Bay played a I don't know what you want to call him.
Sorcerer.
Was he a sorcerer?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize he was a sorcerer. I thought he was just a fighter with spiders running around on him. He could heal you with it, but I guess he kind of, there was a spider god or something that he was attached to, but he would heal you with spiders, which was really quite scary and disgusting, and all in one. Brings out the fear in all people. But
yeah, some people don't like spiders.
He played it as he would pull these spiders out of his pocket, right?
Pouch. Oh yeah.
Or a pouch.
I think it might have been his pocket.
And the reaction of the other players was, "Please put those away."
I'll just bandage myself up there.
I don't know. So depending on how people interact with their gods, right? And clerics, some clerics are more, maybe paladins would be a better example, right?
Well, paladin, both of them, right? I mean, literally, clerics get in D&D. Clerics get their spells from their gods, and if they're being good, whatever that means, they'll get their spells. And if they're not adhering to these ideals of the god, maybe they don't get their spells. I've never played that situation. Like I said, to me, it was like the components part of the wizard or sorcerer spells or wizard spells, where I just didn't even bother with the components. I go, it's just too much bookkeeping. I really don't want to deal with how good you are on the god meter. And what what that god is gonna take or not give.
Right.
Another point I was gonna make is that about gods involving them in your game is that it was just another thing to keep track of. One, I had to, not that it was a big deal, but but to have the pantheon know the pantheon and what domains they have and all that. But then there was that bookkeeping part of where each character was as far as their god. And on their god meter, right? Are they being good or are they being bad? And it was just something else that I didn't want to keep track of. So it was another reason not to involve gods in my game, at least in my brain. Like I said, it wasn't until Storm King's Thunder where it didn't have to be this combat encounter. It didn't have to be a fight between the god, which of course the characters would lose.
Well, we were stuck in was it the fire giants or I don't know, we were in some kind of a ship, or we were stuck with these, not a ship. Maybe it was like under the water or something. It was some giant sphere thing. And we were in there with these giants, and we were just like, how the hell do we get out of here and keep from dying? Right.
I don't remember that, but I think that's how you guys got underwater. Right?
Yeah.
Right. You guys went down like in a big old bubble or something.
Yeah, it was some weird thing.
Yeah, of course, I don't take any credit for those ideas. That was Storm King's Thunder, which I still believe is one of the best D&D campaigns I've ever bought.
You haven't bought that many.
I'm not sure I bought it. Somebody gave it to me.
Probably.
Maybe I bought it. I think that one I bought because I thought
maybe Augustine said, "I want you to run this," and you.
No, I don't remember that, but I do remember looking at it, going, "Oh, this is interesting." And even though there's some sort of a linear action to it, it was very like open ended kind of thing. You can do whatever you want. Here's some interesting things that can happen. I think when I looked at that, I go, "Wow, this is interesting," and wow, gods don't have to be this combat encounter. So gods, right? They're kind of they are strange, and in most Roman and in Greek history, well, Roman and Greek's basically the same gods, right? They have the same.
There's different names.
Different names, but
they're a little
same
bit,
thing.
Yeah.
Mars and what's his name?
Ares.
Ares are they're basically the same people, and Zeus and Zeus and the whoever Jupiter, or is it Saturn? When we look at those gods, they've always seemed, and even back when they were being worshipped by humans, they were always seemed like fickle, right? They could decide what they wanted to do. They didn't abide by any kind of set.
They did. It was just not something that you would understand.
Exactly. So it was no set of rules that we understood, except people recognize that they could be very fickle. They could be very angry, vengeful, resentful, and all these things, which are basically human traits, right? And I think some of them even had like better personalities than others and stuff like that. And I think that's pretty interesting when you role play that and have a reason for that god to take an interest in the players' characters in the game. Maybe they're not even dealing with them directly. Maybe they're dealing with a intermediary or something like that. But I think because I never really involved gods too much in my game, there was a lot of stories that weren't told that could have been told, and it could have been really entertaining and memorable. Because like any time you meet a god or a super powerful being in any game, it's going to be memorable. You remember that dumb hermit who I don't think even helped you that much than that shack, but you remember that guy. The same thing with the crazy green dragon in the forest, and of course when you met the Storm Kings under the demigod, the Storm King giant, the Storm Giant, and all the other giants who were really powerful, and the dragon, right? The dragon that was involved in that whole situation. And I think when people remember stuff and they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that," then that means that's pretty cool, and that's why we play games, to have these great memories. And I think all those years that I had never really dealt with gods or involved them, I think there were like missed opportunities for things to happen, interesting stories to tell.
Well, that's what in Shadowrun when we met a dragon. He wanted to hire. He invited us to dinner, right, at this really, really fancy place. To which all of us are going, okay.
What are we doing here?
Oh yeah, and he wanted to give us steak. I'll pay for steak for you, real steak, not the synthetic kind. But he goes, but I don't need any of that, right? That's not something I would touch. And so we're all sitting at this table, and everybody remembers it because it was a very memorable kind of conversation going on.
And he was odd.
Well, yeah, he was. And we're like going, and we knew that he was like, well, we knew that he was really powerful.
Right.
And we could tell that there was something a little bit different about him.
Right.
In the game, we knew that there were dragons in the city, and in Shadowrun, dragons are not people you want to meet because they're you're a human, you're dead, right?
And they're super powerful. Yeah, and like anytime you deal with a super powerful being, I think
you want to stay on your toes and try not to piss him off,
right? And you got to wonder, what does this guy want with us?
Yeah,
why is this character even?
Why is it a person that's been alive for a long, long time?
Well, his situation was different, right? This particular dragon, he needed
us to protect him.
I had his whole background on him, and it came up with this idea. And I think when I was playing him, I was like trying to play him really odd. Like he was, for that particular character and that dragon, he was trying to pretend to be human, and he was trying to pass himself off as much of a human as he could. But the problem was that he wasn't, and he was he had just really woken up like a year before, or a year and a half.
Yeah.
And he was definitely, to him, all these other dragons that had been awakened before him had really had an advantage. So he was basically hiding from other dragons because he didn't really know the lay of the land. So he was slowly building his power base of soldiers and stuff. And at the same time, he wanted to appear human. Of course, he did not know how
to be human,
or what they did or how they acted. So I try to make him as odd as possible, and not crazy odd like talking in gobbledygook, but just
not understanding
yes,
the way that humans would eat and different kinds of things like that. Like
right,
not understanding the nuances of
right. And so I think when you play any of these super powerful beings, is that you have to figure out. You got to put yourself in their shoes, right? We're role playing, right. And when you role play a being that's one either lives forever, or all of these is super powerful, but wants something from the players, right? That's what you got to remember is there's a reason why this god or being is dealing with the player characters.
Well, sometimes I was reading some of the things that people do with the idea of gods is they have their characters. It be part of the finding whatever the what do they call it?
The MacGuffin.
That's exactly what they said. You have to encounter this god to figure out your piece of what's going on, right? Or to get a clue,
right?
Or so if you're encountering them, they give you different ways to make it more memorable. Like you want it to be an encounter that the player's going to remember, that the character's going to remember. One guy said, "I want it to change the character." In a way, because if you're going to encounter a god, it should be like an amazing thing, right?
Right. Those should be, it could be, and usually would be, life altering, right?
Yeah.
Or at the very...
Now, if I was going to encounter the Morgan or Kali, I would probably want it to be a very short and agreeable encounter. So... depending on the god or goddess you're going to encounter, you're going to want to make it, and it would be memorable, right?
Yeah.
Another
reason why I probably didn't include gods was, I kind of subscribe to the idea that gods are almost not able to be understood by mere mortals. So when I thought about gods and player characters playing together or having some sort of adventure or situation, I always thought, well, why? Why would a god, be somehow involved or take an issue with the player characters? But that was just my brain not being open enough to that they're mercurial creatures, right? There may be no understanding them simply because they're on a different level of knowledge and shenanigans that they're working in the background. Who knows how long this powerful being has been looking at your character's group as they progress from upstarts to heroes of the realm, right?
Or why they noticed you in the first place.
Well, as player characters get more powerful, and usually I'm talking about like D&D.
No, I know.
They level up and they start creating waves.
They're renowned, right?
They're creating waves around them because wherever they go, something happens. And dragons being intelligent, they're like, these people are something to look out for or look at or take an interest in. When I want to play a real powerful being, I got to remember that kind of idea is that though they might be super powerful, they're also very curious and very want to understand mortals in their endeavors.
Well, and the other thing is that if you're going to encounter or have a god or a demigod in your game, it doesn't necessarily have to be they meet the players and they either kill them or they move on, right? The players might think that, but it could just be they wanted to see what was going on, or you just happen to cross paths, right?
And for the player characters, you don't have to give them an explanation.
No.
It's probably better if you don't, and therefore keep the player characters wondering what is going on with this thing. In the Shadowrun game, they suspected that something was up with this guy, and then they kind of figured out that he was possibly a dragon, and that really kind of like upset them. And they're like, "Well, why is he talking to us?" And then, why are we here? And then he just goes, "I just want a little protection from whatever.
To which all of us went, how could we protect him? But then, being Shadowrunners, we knew how we could protect him.
Right. What I was saying is that...
And also, you don't tell a dragon no once they ask you to protect them, right? You're like, you can all look at each other and you're just like, okay.
I never thought about
live
that.
or die, it doesn't matter because this is what we're doing.
I never thought about that because, why would he let you live if he asked you for...
To protect him and you said no?
Not protect him, to hire you for a job and you say no. And what do you want you running around with that knowledge? Probably not. I never thought about that, but there you go. You guys acquiesced and did the right thing. So, some things to consider about dragons, about gods and demigods in your games is gods are weird, strange, and even sometimes incomprehensible. Quirky. Right? I think about Q, and I think about Loki. Right?
Well, if you remember in the 90s, there was Xena, the warrior princess, and Hercules.
Yes,
and those shows were hilarious because they brought out the different kinds of, they were campy, right? But they brought out the different gods, right? And how gods would, the whole pantheon was there, right?
Yes, and how they would use
humans as their playthings to do their bidding.
Yeah, and to maneuver.
Yeah.
For whatever kind of advantage against other gods, which is another thing that is very prominent in the stories, is that the gods would use humans as a way of getting at other god. The worst thing you could probably be a personal favorite of a god, because then the other gods would definitely want to mess with that character.
Well, and then there's also the Marvel movies with Thor and Odin and Loki are portrayed, right? And,
yes,
and that whole section of gods, right? That pantheon is there.
Right. God's motivations are strange and mercurial. You usually can't figure out what they're up to, and they might have, what do you call it, machinations upon machinations, and their ulterior motive may not be very apparent.
Well, and it doesn't really matter, right? Because you're only a little pawn in whatever they're doing, right?
Correct. And the way most gods are portrayed in the fiction or in writings is that they're very fickle. They're serious. They're vengeful. There's really this bag of emotions, and I know that's people's putting their ideas into the gods, and that's how they are. That's why it flooded yesterday and killed all my crops, right? Because they're jerks.
Or you did something wrong.
Oh, you did something wrong, but you don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Encountering gods can be a single or a complex situation. It could be just by chance, even though most gods probably wouldn't do that, but it could be. Or it could be for a very serious, complex situation, like the dragon who wanted to hire you guys and stuff like that.
Your players don't have to know what the whole situation is, right?
Right, exactly. It's better if they don't. Characters or players who are questioning what's going on.
And most gods aren't going to just come out and tell you a long story about what's going on.
There's a whole plan of what's going on from beginning to end. I don't think, no. In fact, most humans don't want to tell you that.
Well, usually like in D&D, you would probably run into this kind of thing like with dragons or giants or different kinds of things. But it would be like you're in some mysterious cave or you're in the ruins of a temple.
Oh, yeah.
And someone just walks out and you're like, and they just start talking to you, right? Something mundane and yet different, right?
Strange, yes. The last part I wanted to talk about was meeting gods should always be memorable. Unless you're going for that long, slow play, right? Where a god just kind of impersonates a human or whatever game you're playing. And then it just makes little, what do you call it, drops in
every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
In a campaign.
He's the innkeeper, or he's the caravan guard or caravan master.
How would your players know?
Well, you keep seeing him, and he keeps coming around every once in a while at very key points of the game, or to help you out. As gods would do. They kind of play chess with you, right? They're using you as a chess piece. They don't want you to die quite yet because you're not fulfilled their obligation or their thought of.
Or maybe they want you to find something for them,
yes,
and
or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that including gods in your game, not just having them around and not doing anything, would be
Well,
pretty
they
cool.
already are, right? There's a pantheon in D&D. There's like
Yeah, but if you never really
that's what they're around.
they're around, yeah, but they don't take part in your game or you don't put them in your game. I think those are missed opportunities, and I think if player characters or the characters are indeed leveling up and doing good and good as in not dying and getting more powerful, you could use gods as a way of just interacting and even giving them adventures, right, for the future.
And you don't have to do it in every game.
No,
it
of
could just
course
be
not.
every once in a while.
Yeah. Two games that come to my brain that are science fiction games, but there's magic and there's gods, or there's not magic, but there's gods. One is Coriolis,
Okay.
where you pray to the gods every time you want to do something like, and it's part of the game. There's an actual in-game benefit that if you pray to God, you get a bonus die or something like that. And then, of course, Empire Pedal Throne, it was basically a science fiction game. At least that's the setting. And then it was so far in the future that technology was super powerful. The gods are actually alien beings, super powerful alien beings that through some warp in space are able to enter the world of Tecmo. So I think I'm sure there's other science fiction games that have gods in them and stuff, or even like modern games that have gods in them. There is a game called where you play a demigod. I mean, you play a hero. Skion is the name of the game. There's Skion Hero and Skion Demigod, where you at the very beginning or the first book you play a progeny of one of the gods, and you just have like a little bit of a special ability because you were half human and half god. And Skion Demigod, you ascend to demigod status, and of course the campaign changes, and of course it's a different book, so you have to buy that. That's a World of Darkness game. So I always thought that would be interesting of player characters who are very young and are just realizing that they are not, that they're half god or have some god blood in them, if you use that term. So I think they're demigods and super powerful beings. Throw them in your game and have fun, because I think every time I've included them in the last few years of gods or powerful beings like dragons, those are memorable moments. Even I totally forgot about the hermit until we started this podcast about the golden dragon being a hermit in Storm King's Thunder, and how you remembered that. I had just forgotten about it, and how memorable it was, even though it wasn't even really a long encounter.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. See, that just shows you can include them any way you want.
Right.
So there you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.